Okay, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Salatu Salamu ala Rasulullah. Bismillah, Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah, ala alihi wa sahbihi. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Thumma amma ba'd, to proceed. Inshallah, we are still on this book here, Al-Ubudiyyah. Al-Ubudiyyah means basically slavery, being a true slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To be a true slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the highest ranking, to the point where when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was recognized in Surah Al-Isra, on the most honorable event, the event of rising to the heavens, above and beyond anyone else, Allah said, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi. Glory be to him who took his slave on a night journey. And that is to the Holy Land, may Allah liberate it. And then there was the ascent thereafter. So slavery means, Ubudiyyah means slavery, and it's slavery to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And honestly speaking, you will never be free until you become a true slave of Allah. And to the point where Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi, well, let me finish what. So the book is by Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, may Allah bestow mercy on him, translated by Nasir al-Din al-Khatib, published by Taha Publications, and there is another one published by Hidayah as well. So Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi said about slavery to Allah and true liberation. You know liberalism? Liberalism is one of the three sort of points of reference for humanity. Usually, like as a higher reference, people usually tend to either have a religious higher reference or liberalism as an ideology, or socialism as another ideology. These are the moral ideologies that people hang on to as higher moral references. And why is that? Because the moral reference has to draw on human inclination, human fitra, human inclination. Part of your fitra is to recognize the supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of all things, because you are a creature. Part of your fitrah is to look up to the heavens. Part of your fitrah is to supplicate to the one creator and maintainer of this universe when you are in hardship, no matter how many other gods you worshipped before that. That's part of your fitrah, part of your genuine inclination. That is the people's eagerness or people's inclination towards religiosity, with worship of God. People also have an inclination towards freedom. People want to be free, like to be free, like to be liberated. And that is why liberalism is a strong ideology, because it works on that human inclination. So since it works on human inclination, we're not talking about good or bad now. We're just talking about, as an ideology, it is actually the sweeping ideology in our times. The Western liberalism is the dominant ideology in the whole world, because it draws on this inclination, human inclination of the love for freedom and liberty. Add to it human pride, human rights, etc., etc. Then you have socialism. Socialism draws on that human tendency for communion, like making communities, living in societies, togetherness, gathering. So human beings are not designed to be loners. They're not designed to be, extremely individualistic or to live as loners. The human beings are designed to want to live in communities and to bond and to relate, to have relationships and to have friendships and so on and so forth. So that tendency is where socialism is what socialism draws on for, to be a moral reference point for humanity. Now, liberalism and socialism, liberalism as a meaning, liberty as a meaning, being good to the society as a meaning, as a concept, is part and parcel of us. It's just totally Islamic. It's absolutely Islamic. But liberalism and socialism as ideologies are rejected Islamically because they, as ideologies, are rejected Islamically because at the very foundation of the ideology is the rejection of the Creator. It is the rejection of any reference point for humanity outside of human experience and human knowledge and awareness. Anything that is beyond matter, anything that is beyond matter means metaphysical. Meta, beyond matter, physical. Metaphysical is whatever is beyond matter. So anything that's beyond matter, anything that's beyond human experience, human recognition, awareness, is rejected by any secular ideology. However, when we talk about liberalism as Muslims, we do not simply just shoot it down because you will look like you are against liberty. You look like you are against human rights. You look like you are against human dignity. Because that is what liberalism tries to portray itself as. So you sort of disassemble it. You have to disassemble it. Do not accept it as as an ideology together like this. Because if you accept it as an ideology, you will not be able to separate that ideology from the historical background, the historical context within which this ideology sprouted. What is the historical context? The historical context is Europe, 17th century, second part of 17th century, as Europe that is fed up with structured religion, Europe that is fed up with the monarchy, Europe that is fed up with the feudal system, Europe that rebelled against the monarchs and the priests, Europe that said, let's hang the first monarch or king by the intestines of the last priest, or hang the last king by the intestines of the last priest. So that is Europe through which John Locke, the first one who really formulated a theory about liberalism, was part of that historical context. And, the rest of them, Voltaire, French philosophers, etc., they were part of that context. You will never be able to separate liberalism as an ideology from its birthplace, from its its biological mother. The ideology actually emanated from, sprouted from this extreme resentment against monarchy and structured religion. Therefore, liberalism was defined as liberating people. That may even be on Wikipedia. You can go to Wikipedia and check it out. Liberating people from monarchy, structured religion, and the feudal system. The feudal system basically has been reproduced by capitalism in a way that is just quite funny, because it is just a different type of feudal system. And instead of the farm, it's the factory or the company. But it has been basically reproduced in its ugliest form. The only difference is there is some prosperity that is sort of silencing the lower income people or the lower socioeconomic strata. They still can eat food. They still can find food. It's not such a great food anyway. It's full of sugar and stuff. But anyway, they still feel like they are doing okay. The difference between this and the feudal system in the past is just a difference of plenty and poverty. It is not a difference. It's not like a structural difference between the systems, the two systems. It is just the difference that feudal system in the past, and the farms in the past, if you were able to actually support all the needs of everybody and make everybody happy and fill their stomachs and so on, they would have not been that resentful after all. But it was not true. Therefore, they built up their resentment. So since you cannot really extract it from its birthplace and it is biological mother, you will not be able as a Muslim to accept it, because you cannot accept an ideology that has at the heart of it, the very foundation of it, extreme resentment of structured religion. And our religion happened to be structured, by the way. It's not, it is not like an anarchist religion. It is a structured religion to a great extent. It structures your life. But the reasons of the resentment against structure of the religion are not present in our religion. They can be made present in our religion by misinterpretation and malpractice, but they are not found in the teachings of the religion at an intellectual, philosophical level. They are not found in the teachings of the religion, although some Muslims can actually act in a way that makes the environment quite depressing. But it did not historically happen in Muslim countries like it happened in Europe. We have to also say that. It really never happened in Muslim countries like it happened in Europe. The Muslim scholars have not, although there are bad Muslim scholars, but the Muslim scholars have never in their entirety or in their vast majority as a body sort of conspired with the monarchs, with the ruling elite against the public. The Muslim scholars, the true scholars, have never done any of that for sure, but even scholars per se, educated clergy, if you may say that, their vast majority did not do this. Therefore, there would be no reason for us to reproduce that or to relive their history like some Muslims try to do in our countries, sort of try to start from where they started and take it from there. So there is no reason to relive their history. But there is also a danger in having that resentment make you sort of fail to recognize the beauties of some of those teachings. Yes, human dignity is a good thing. Human rights is a good thing. Human equality is a good thing. There are good things. Liberty is a good thing. And every good thing is sanctioned in Islam. But Islam weeds out the bad things and sets some limits for the good things. Because liberty is a good thing, but yes, but there is one point where that liberty is not a good thing, or your understanding of liberty is not a good thing. To say I'm free to do whatever I want as long as I don't harm anyone, it doesn't work out this way all the time, because your understanding of not harming anyone is the direct assault on someone's body or money or property or something of that nature. But when you go out and have sex out of the wedlock before marriage, you know, outside of the institution of marriage, you think it's by mutual consent. I'm not harming anyone. You know, everybody should mind their business. But eventually, that produces 100,000 kids that are waiting in the foster care system for someone to pick them up. And those kids suffer greatly, hugely, in every regard, and move from home to home to home, and so on. You harmed a lot of people, but you may think you're not harming anyone. Eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and you're thinking from your own spectacles, which are narrow, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has comprehensive knowledge and absolute wisdom. Therefore, when Allah tells you don't do it, don't say, well, I'm free. So that is a major difference between liberalism and Islam, a difference that is not reconcilable. Not reconcilable, because in liberalism, man is the master of the world. By the way, the liberalism is from the 17th century. They did not apply it across the board on all humanity. They only applied it on certain, you know, groups amongst the humankind. Otherwise, they colonized and occupied countries and subjected their native. So we're not going to go there. But even if you say liberalism that makes all human beings equal, but again, at the end of the day, it is counter to, it's anathema to us and counter to our belief to say that man is the master of the universe. It is Allah, not man. Man is the servant of Allah and the master of everything else. Yes, man is the master of whatever it is that's on earth, because Allah created سَخَرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا مِنْهُ. And Allah subdued that which is in the heavens and that which is on the earth, all of it. Allah subdued them for you. So man is the master of Allah is the master of the universe. Man is the servant of God and master of everything else. So basically that ideological conflict at the foundation and root does not allow you to say that Islam is a liberal religion, or Islam and liberalism are the same thing. Yeah, disassemble what liberalism means, take the meanings one by one, and do this with everything. Just don't take any expression or terminology and just use it recklessly, ignorantly. Do this. Break it down. Tell me what that means. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. 1, yeah, let's examine it. Yes, that passes. 2, let's examine it. It passes, but with the following conditions. 3, no, it doesn't pass. And that is how you should look at things. Why did we say this? Because of the title of the book, Al-Ubudiyyah, which is slavery, and the concept that we talked about, which is slavery versus liberty. And by the way, people who seek liberty from God, they'll be slaves of everything else. You can seek liberty as much as you want, but once you have once you have attained that in your own thinking, you're completely subdued. You're completely controlled. But if in your own thinking, you hide your head in the sand and you say there is no God, and then you go on your way doing everything you want because, you're relieved now there is no one watching over you. You can do whatever you want. However, the studies have found that those people suffer more mental illness and more, heart problems and hypertension and et cetera, than people who do actually believe in God. So after all, you did not win. And if you don't achieve that servitude to Allah, slavery to Allah, you'll be slave of your supervisor, you'll be slave of your spouse, you'll be slave of your lover, you'll be slave of a lot of people. You could be even a slave of your classmates, bullies, some of the bullies, or a neighbor that's bullying you. You could be always afraid of that bully neighbor, and so on. And because he can actually stick out the gun and shoot you, and then your life will end, and life is that's it for you. You don't think in anything afterwards. So it's such a great cause of worry, and you have to be worried about everything in this case. But once you really achieve that true slavery of God, then you will achieve the highest level of freedom and liberty. That's why Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi, going back to Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi, I then tell you what he said. He said, فجوهر التهليل الوله بآلهيته وحقيقته الامتلاء والغنى وطعمه البصر وحقيقته وجوهر التهليل الوله بآلهيته. Jawhar al-Tahleel means the essence of repeating La ilaha illallah. Tahleel is saying La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. He said, وَجَوْهَرُ التَّهْلِيلِ الْوَلَهُ بِآلِهِيَتِهِ. Walah is what? It is a state of extreme love and, if you want to say, joy, ecstasy in a good sense, not in a bad sense. So that state of extreme joy, al-walahu bi-alihiyatihi, joy in being the slave of the true God, of recognizing, connecting with the divine, alihiyatihi, divinity. So that connection with divinity is the essence of repeating La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. وحقيقته الامتلاء والغنى وطعمه البصر وثمرته الحرية والانعتاق من الرق. وحقيقته الامتلاء والغنى وطعمه الامتلاء والغنى. طعمه الامتلاء والغنى. And its taste. So he talked about the essence of Tahleel, and then he says the taste of Tahleel is al-imtila' wal-ghina, which is to be full and self-sufficient. Imtala'a mali is full. معدتي امتلأت, my stomach has become full. So al-imtila' is fullness. What does fullness here mean? Like you're full, like you are not in need of anything. Like you're fully satisfied. You've reached the degree of fulfillment. And therefore, you're not after anything. You're not keen on anything. You're not eager for anything because you're full. You're fulfilled. So that is the taste of saying La ilaha illallah. That is the taste that you will have, that you will acquire with repeating La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. Because that repetition is not only a verbal repetition, If it is a verbal repetition, it is not going to go, too far. But it is as well a mental, heartly repetition, so that the concept sinks in. There is no God but Allah. There is no God but Allah. And all of the ramifications, all of the applications, all of the consequences of that concept sink into your heart and sink into your mind. So you don't rely on anyone but Allah. You don't fear from anyone but Allah. You don't have hope in anyone but Allah. And you never feel let down, because if you are serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will come to your help and to your rescue, and so on and so forth. So you will feel completely fulfilled, because connecting to the divine, there is nothing more beautiful than this. So people who get like particularly happy about a good meal, or about like a bowl of ice cream or something of that nature, or pizza, or they get particularly joyous about promotion at work, or getting a little bit more money. Those people are so, it does not mean that we will not be happy with any of that. It does not mean that we are not human beings. No, but people who think that this is it, those people are so masakeen. You feel a lot of pity for them. Because that is really not it, and it is not close to anything close to it. But connecting with the divine gives you that fulfillment that is, not comparable to anything else. وطعمهم الامتلاء والغنى. امتلاء is fulfillment, and غنى is sufficiency, self-sufficiency, or like I'm ghani. Do you know the beauty of the word ghani in Arabic, which means rich, it is very beautiful. Honestly speaking, it is extremely beautiful, because ghani, which means rich, comes from what? Comes from istighna. Ghani means someone who is self-sufficient, someone who does not need more, not someone who has a lot, someone who does not need more. You see the difference? So rich, it means someone who has a lot, right? Yeah. 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 Istighna والغنى. But ghani, it comes from that root. Istighna is when you tastaghni, or that you count on what you have, therefore you do not need more, or you do not need something else. So that word, that root word, which is from those three letters, is very, very expressive of what ghina truly means. Ghina, or richness, in this sense, would mean that you do not need more. And that is the right definition of richness. Because no matter how much you have, you are poor if you think you need more, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ even expressed this beautifully when he said that whoever makes the dunya his major concern, Allah will put poverty between his eyes. Which means what? That no matter how much you have, poverty will be here. In other words, you will only see poverty. You will only see yourself, recognize yourself, perceive yourself as someone who is extremely poor. And if you look at some of the real poor people, if you use just like some standards, whatever standards, and how happy they are, some are, with TV all over the place now and stuff. Less and less people are truly happy, but some are, and they have so little, but they are extremely happy, and they're satisfied, and they think that, wallahi, I have seen those people. They think like, what do I need more? And you look at him, what does he have in the first place? He doesn't have much. He doesn't have anything. But he thinks that and that is the ghani, which means self-sufficient. And this is a consequence, a byproduct of repeating La ilaha illallah with true contemplation, thinking, mental and heartly. وطعمه الامتلاء والغنى وريحه البصر وثمرته الحرية. وريحه البصر, the smell, the fragrance of that repetition of La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah is your recognition of your slavery to Allah, your recognition of Allah's supremacy, Allah's divinity. So he says, وَرِيحُهُ الْبَصَرِ رِيحُهُ الْبَصَرِ, which is the odor of it, or the fragrance of it, is al-basar, which is sight, but here it means sight and insight. It does not only mean sight, the vision of the vision of the eyes. It also includes the vision of the heart. So it is sight and insight. And he said, وَثَمَرَتُهُ, its fruit, the fruit of the repetition of La ilaha illallah, tahleel, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. This is a tahleel. And وَثَمَرَتُهُ الْحُرِّيَّةِ, freedom, liberty. That is the fruit of your slavery to Allah, your recognition of His divinity, supremacy, greatness, and absoluteness. وَالْانْعِتَاقُ مِنَ الرِّقِّ, and to عتاق من الرق, and to be clear of all forms of slavery, or to be free of all forms. So if you want to translate it, you would say that its fruit is liberty and being free from all forms of slavery. Because slavery is not only one form, it's many forms. Sometimes you're enslaved to your own desires. And sometimes, you see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, subhanAllah, Allah's power is enormous. Some people who have everything, and who have status and have power and have money and have everything, and they may have acquired it through lawful and unlawful means, and just and unjust and ways, they can be enslaved to one desire. They can, for instance, she could be after one man, or he could be after one particular woman. Yeah, and then he cannot overcome this. You know, like how many women are there in the world? Like 3.5 billion? That's it. He became a slave of that desire. And it doesn't have to be a sexual desire per se. It could be, you know, the so-called prepositional or emotional, or something that is not carnal or fleshy or anything. But again, it is the enslavement. It's the fact that after you have all of this, you have become a slave of that. Some people become slaves of drugs, slaves of smoking, cigarettes. I know someone, like some da'i, who used to use this trick. If you go to the people, he'll tell them, you know what? You are a slave of that thing. So he'll tell you, what? Who are you a slave? He'll tell you, أنت عبد السيجارة, كن عبد الله. You are the slave of the cigarettes. Be the slave of Allah, you know. So you tell him, slave of cigarettes? Yeah, so you tell him, yes, I challenge you to quit it. If you're saying that you can't quit it, you are the slave of cigarettes. meaning the cigarettes have more power over you than you can challenge. Like the desire, your willpower is not up to challenging that desire. Therefore, you're dependent on it. Therefore, you're, to an extent, a slave of it. So that person who has everything, and if he cannot get that woman or man or whatever it is, or not woman or man, if he can't become the CEO, for instance, what's his name? The fellow that was with Armstrong, who was supposed actually to land on the moon first before Armstrong, and then something happened to him, and he couldn't make it out of the spaceship. Huh? Huh? Aldrin, yes. So wasn't he depressed for the rest of his life? He was. He felt dismayed and sort of frustrated for the rest of his life because he was the second man to step on the moon, not the first, where he was actually scheduled to be the first. So I feel for him, but the idea is, but again, you're the second man to step on the moon. It's not bad after all.
But we couldn't even remember his name.
I see. That's no,
That's part of it.
But whoever gave you that right, that entitlement, why did you feel entitled to this? That's the idea. If you do not feel entitled to anything, then you will appreciate everything and you will not grieve over anything. Just don't feel entitled. Like you could wake up in the morning without your eyesight. Some people do. So why do you feel entitled? Why don't you say in the morning when you wake up and you can see the light, why couldn't you show gratitude, gratefulness? Some people wake up and they don't see the light. Just recently, some sister called me from someplace and talked to me about being diagnosed, like a young woman in her 20s, being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It's a condition that could be controlled in certain cases, but quite unpredictable in other cases. And in multiple sclerosis, you just all of a sudden lose movement in one of your limbs. All of a sudden, you lose your hearing. All of a sudden, you can lose sight in one eye. All of a sudden, you lose sight in the other eye. All of a sudden, you can lose sensations, one or the other, because it works on the central nervous system. And it is unpredictable, and you don't know when it will happen. So you live all of your life. In fact, I have a family member who had multiple sclerosis in his 30s or so, and he was extremely successful, extremely accomplished, extremely accomplished. But he was just diagnosed with multiple sclerosis one day, and it was not too long after that he was completely bedridden because he started to lose one thing after the other, and it would just be a few months between, losing movement in one limb, losing movement in the next limb. The idea here is just be prepared for this. Don't feel entitled, because you're not entitled. You know where entitlement comes from? Entitlement comes from making it yourself. Making it yourself. Then you're entitled. Did you make your own sight or hearing? Did you make your own limbs? Therefore, you're not entitled. Therefore, be grateful for what you have. Because then you can be free. Free of all things and free of grief. Because what is it that you'll grieve over if you do not think of yourself as entitled to anything. There is not much that you grieve over. Isn't that ultimately liberating? It's liberating from everything. It even liberates you from grief itself. Because once you have connected to the divine, and once you have seen yourself as one who is not entitled to anything, who should be grateful for everything that he has, that is extremely liberating from grief and distress and worries about the future and what could happen and so on and so forth.